welcome again. I did hear from Nora that she was not able to make it. I did not hear from Alana, so I'm going to assume she's not coming based on so. No, I just sent her one, so I'm going to, okay. Vice Chair Lofold, if you would do the roll call for us, that would be great. Thank you. Here, do you want to just sit there and do it?
Member Eder? Here. Member Kirby? Here. Member Loeffler-Kemp?
Here.
Member Lofeld is here. Member Oswald? Member Sandstead? Member Trinka? Here. Excused. Assistant, the superintendent and the assistant are excused. So is Kathy Erickson. Yep, we've got a quorum.
Okay, thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Is that all I need?
That's all you need. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Member Lofold. Okay, thank you all again, board members, for being here for our 2 presentations, and to give them the full amount of time. I think we will want to jump in, but I think we'll also want to go around and just do a quick round of introductions and maybe just say how long you've been on the board. That might be helpful. I'll start. So Rosie Loeffler-Camp, and I'm board chair, and I'm in my 2nd term, my 6th year on the board.
David Kirby, and I'm just finishing my first 4-year term.
Sally Trinka, I'm in my 2nd year.
Kelly Eder, I've been on the board since November 1st. I was appointed in October. Thank you.
And I'm Jill Lofeld, and I'm also my 1st term, finishing the 2nd year with Sally.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this is the first of our superintendent search firm company presentations, and we are excited to have the Minnesota School Board Association here to begin, and I would imagine you guys will introduce yourself as well, right? Okay. So thank you again for making the trip up here and allowing us this opportunity to learn more about you. Okay.
We should just leave this on, I'm guessing, right? Okay. Well, thanks for the invitation to present MSBA's proposal today. I'm Sandy Gunlock. I'm the Director of School Board Services, and my primary function at MSBA is the leadership of the Superintendent Search Service. I'm in my 14th year. Sandy?
I'm Sandy Novak. I am a service provider for them. I was a former superintendent, acting superintendent in Butterfield, Odin, and most of my career was in Burnsville, Eagan Savage, and I ended there as an assistant superintendent. Okay.
Hi, I'm Barb Doran. I'm the Director of Leadership Development, and I joined MSBA this summer. So thank you very much for having us here today.
Just take a moment here to get used to the slide movement. Okay, well, you should have a slide presentation in front of you, and we also brought copies of the proposal and the addendum that we submitted earlier in case we want to reference it throughout our presentation. But once again, our first slide up there is we've identified who the Executive Search Service team will be for the search if we're lucky enough to be the folks who are selected. Of course, I'm the lead superintendent searcher, but I should make known the fact that I do have 2 grandchildren in the district, and my daughter now works for you. So we put that out there just so you know that. And the person then who would be most likely the lead then, if that was a concern to anyone, would be Gary Lee. Otherwise, I would be more than happy to lead up that if that were the case, but I just felt you should know that I have a lot of personal interest in your outcome, to say the least. But and so we have Gary Lee as MSBA's Deputy Executive Director, and of course you've met Barb, would be the primary team. And then Sandy Novak, we're really lucky to have her join our team as one of our service providers. But as you can see, we also have access to all of MSBA staff, and there are 25 of us. And we actually have 11 service providers. So even though Sandy may be the primary service provider who would work with you, we would call on the expertise of all the others that are part of our team. So next up is just going backwards here. We have a lot of familiarity with Duluth Public Schools. So we're thinking a lot about that as we were putting together the proposal that we submitted earlier previously. But according to MSBA's data bank, we noticed that you have well over 8,000 students in your district. And we know that you have a lot of really great programming in place, things such as your career readiness programs. You've got your Spanish immersion program, which is also near and dear to my grandchildren's heart. You've got your full-service community schools in place. You have a lot of great opportunities in the arts and the co-curricular areas as well. And we also are well aware of the fact that you have your increasing diversity within your community, your student clientele. And okay, good point. Thank you. It's just like a staff meeting. We have to be reminded to turn things off and on. So thank you. But we also know that transparency is something that's important to you as a school board, and it seems also as a community. And of course, we just can't ignore the fact that you are in a beautiful part of the state along the banks of the Lake Superior. Those are all the different kinds of things we were thinking about the district as we put together the proposal. But then we just also wanted to just remind you just a little bit about who we are. We are the Minnesota School Boards Association. We're your professional organization. We'll be celebrating our centennial, 100th year centennial this January at Leadership Conference. That makes it, and actually we are the 8th oldest school board association in the country. We're an organization that is financially stable, so we're a sound nonprofit organization, so you can count on us. We're not going to go anywhere. We've been here 100 years, and we'll be here most likely, MSBA will be, not us, but we'll be here another 100 years after today, after we celebrate. We have, because of our longstanding presence in the state, we have a lot of knowledge of Minnesota school districts. We've been here, we've worked with you in the past, and we look forward to continuing to work with you in whatever capacities in the future. Just a little history, we've been conducting searches since the 2009-10 school year, and so far we've conducted 59 searches. Actually, we could now count at 60. We just completed the Hastings interim superintendent search last night. And last year alone, we conducted 21 searches in the state. We have worked with districts of all size, basically, mid-size rural, small, and suburban districts. We haven't worked with any what we would call the large urban districts at this point in time, but it's just a matter of time before we do. We're confident of that. And we just also like to mention that we are members of the National Affiliation of Superintendent Searchers. It's a national organization that connects all of the state school board associations that have a staff on hand who conduct superintendent searches. It's an arm of the National School Boards Association. So through that membership, we have that national reach, which we think is a very important thing to school boards, no matter what size. Now, just to, Sandy and I are just going to kind of walk you through the search proposal itself, just highlight a few things that, how we approach the work, and maybe a few areas that make us different, probably, than other folks who might be in the business of conducting superintendent searches. So on that slide, we've chunked it out into 5 categories. We've got the planning part of the search, the stakeholder component, the recruiting, advertising, the screening of candidates, and then we've got also the facilitation of the interviews. The main thing we'd like to say about the planning of the search, basically these steps are the same for everybody. Basically, it's really the approach or the philosophy behind things that may differentiate people. But the planning, the key things within that component is if we're selected, we would want to meet with the board as soon as possible to plan the search. And the big key thing there is to develop a really good timeline and a sense of where you're headed with regard to the hiring criteria. The other piece that would be important at the planning meeting is to really think about the stakeholder engagement piece, because that's something that we're, in just a moment, Sandy will share with you some ideas of how we see ourselves being involved with you in that component. The other thing that we would find is real important as part of the planning component is just a conversation around the procedures, who will do what and when, just as a reminder so we're all on the same page. But we just found that over time that when you put the effort into clarifying everything, it's a better result for everyone. It's less anxiety provoking, toward the end, those kinds of things. So we just like to spend some time just revisiting all the procedures and just always coming back around to the concept that the process is important. And once you, as a board, have set that course and direction, the importance of just trusting and working that process through to its completion. Because in my experience, or our experience, it works every time, one way or another. The process does. So we're just going to jump ahead here to the stakeholder conversation, because that really is the next big component that's up for conversation.
Okay, there are 5 opportunities, as you can see in the bullet points. Whoops. I thought I was going to be on top of things here. Okay, I was. You didn't even notice, did you? Okay. All right, so there are 5 opportunities, as the bullets up there show, for stakeholder involvement. We really want to make people feel comfortable and be honest in their opinions. So the first one up there is an online survey. That's usually posted on your website about 2 days after we have the planning meeting, so just shortly after, and it remains up there for about 2 weeks. Now, if we find out that we don't have as much of a reception as we'd like, we can keep it up there a little longer. People ask about what happens if you have some of your population who do not have computers or access to computers. We also have hand-tabulated mechanisms so that they can turn in a written survey as well, and we will tabulate it into the other portions. We use SurveyMonkey, and so you'll get the results of that instrument when we are finished. We also have an opportunity to facilitate community and school district staff listening sessions, and we have 3 scheduled for in-district meetings of such. That's on 3 consecutive day and nights. So we'll be in your district with however many people we think we need to bring to conduct as many of those meetings as gives you the perspective of the population you're serving. So we'll do some in schools, we'll do some in the community, and what has worked in other places is you find out where the most common gathering spots are. So if you have a high density area, you might want something close to that high density area. And other times they hold them in cafes, or some are in the schools for your staff and that kind of a thing. But you want to be as open as possible, and you're going to direct that for us. You're going to tell us where you want to have those meetings. There will be several of us in the district at that time, and we will have a scheduled program of what we are going to be doing and when we're going to do that. That will all be decided ahead of time. Then the next opportunity is that we're also going to facilitate one-on-one interviews with each one of the school board members and up to 30 people in your district that are key stakeholders or key leaders. So in other communities, it has been, a member of the police force. It can be Lions Club. It could be Rotary person. It can be, some of those key people that have been involved with the schools before that you just want to have their voice heard in a similar fashion. That will be in addition to those facilitated listening sessions as well. Then the next opportunity is that we have community and school district staff question and answer forums for the semifinalists. In Winona, when we were there, we had a full day of meetings for those semifinalists in the district. So they were scheduled on a separate day. So one finalist would come in one day, another one would come in the second day, and the third finalist would come on the third day. part of that time we had a community and staff question and answer, so they submitted their questions, either the first night or ahead of time, and then we use the same questions for all three candidates because we want to be fair to all of the three finalists if you choose three. Okay? And then the last opportunity is that the school board believes that the School Board Association believes that you are the body that will select the next superintendent. So we advise that it would be you that does the interview and has the interview questions and things. But if you want community and school district staff interviewing as part of your team, then we will make sure that we train those individuals so that we follow the law as prescribed in those interviews. And they're all open sessions, so we have to be careful on what kinds of questions we ask and also to be fair among all of them. So it's going to be your process. This is what you desire. We can advise you along the way, but all throughout the process, you will help us facilitate the process the way you want. Okay?
And just tagging on to something that Sandy just mentioned in terms of the staff and/or community interview teams. That is something that we offer and help boards make happen in most of the searches that we're conducting these days. And it often involves either something along the lines of a staff committee of maybe about 8 people. It could be an administrative team because of the size of your district. There could be one that's maybe administrators, building principal team, and then a community team as well. And like as Sandy said, then the person would just rotate through all of those and then end the day with the board, most likely on the first day of interviews. And that seems to be when we have seen it work best from our experience.
And again, their role then is just to be an advisor to the board. You are the decision makers. They wouldn't be involved in the decision, but they just advise the board, okay?
I meant to mention this, but we're going to wait till after they present to ask questions just so they can present all they want and we don't get caught up in questions. So there will be an opportunity for questions, but we want them to have the time they need to present as well. Thank you.
Well, next up, we thought it would be important to talk about recruiting and advertising because we think this is one of those areas where different search firms approach things differently. So we have our first slide is our approach. Again, we're the School Board Association. We come from that perspective, and we really believe that you, the board, will provide us guidance throughout the whole process. We also, when we conduct a search, we do what we call is cast a wide net. So we make sure we send our brochures out to a variety of folks, sitting superintendents, principals, anybody who is on our list. Then again, we also make it available to folks that's on our website, and then also folks who may want it who are not on our list. They send us an email, we send the information to them. The other thing we do is what we call targeted outreach. And what that is generally we take into consideration the size and type of district, the demographics, and then we would then look for other districts of similar size and demographics up or down from that a little bit, and then reach out to people. We imagine doing cold calling superintendents in other states, reaching out to assistant superintendents, associate superintendents, all kinds of folks who would have a skill set that you would be looking for. And of course, we wouldn't know that until you develop it, and we seek to line that up. We just also want to make note of the fact, as with probably all the firms that you would have looked at, is MSBA is an equal opportunity search agency, and we really, one of our philosophies is that internal applicants, internal candidates. It's important for those folks to go through the process just as anyone else would who might apply, and if he or she is the chosen candidate, they get the job on their own merits, type of thing. So we wanted to make sure that was included up there. And the other item is that every search is we create a pool of applicants for every search based on individuals who want to be involved in that search. We don't look into our past searches and just move people around from search to search. We really do want them to take initiative to show that they want to be a part of this community and part of and help lead the district. But that's after we would have targeted them, reached out to them, just to make them aware of Duluth if they haven't already seen that information. The other thing that is important in terms of recruiting and advertising, that these are the methods we use. That we develop a two-page brochure, sent back-to-back, printed back-to-back, color, and use that to market. For your search, we anticipate mailing it, a copy to all the superintendents in the state and other folks on our list, in addition to the email version of things that we rely heavily on. We've actually found emailing to be quite an effective tool. Because usually once we send out an email we usually have one or two people get back to us almost immediately saying they're interested in more information on whatever search it is that we may be conducting. So we found that to be very effective. We posted on our website, of course, the Superintendents Association's website, and EdPost. Those are the three most effective places in Minnesota to post superintendent openings. We also think it's important to look at some of the other associations that are listed up there to really cast a wide net beyond Minnesota and our typical MSBA, MASA, and EdPost sites, and that would be through the National Alliance of Black School Educators, the Latino Administrators and Superintendents, and then also the National Indian Education Association. Our colleagues in other states who work with even more diverse districts that are as diverse or more diverse than Duluth have found some success when using those methods to reach out to prospective candidates. So we have included those ideas in your proposal as for you to consider, as I guess under optional, as was mentioned briefly. And then again, I've already mentioned that we send the information out via email and would send it out post-mail to folks, but we also would make sure that we send that out to our affiliation, the National Affiliation of Superintendent Searches, because then that gives us a really great national reach. But I have to say that, with all searches these days, not only are they're local, they're state, they're national, but they're also international. The reach is really great when you really think about it. The next item we just would quickly review is for our screening process. The way we, at MSBA, the way we conduct our screening is after the application deadline has passed, a team of 5 individuals, and it includes some staff and, Sandy, of course, Barb, myself, or Gary, and then 2 other individuals will review all of the applications the next day. And then once we've reviewed them, we separate out, of course, the ones that are not complete, and we focus on the completed applications for the rest of the time that we have the materials. And as we're reviewing the applications, we are working with your established hiring criteria, because you would have told us what you're looking for, and so we're looking for evidence of those criteria within the documents that we're looking at and any pre-outreach that we may have conducted. Then we get to that third step. The third step is once we've identified who stands out in the pool against your hiring criteria, we'd probably say we'd be looking for 5 or 6 people. Once we identify who those individuals are, we reach out to them and inform them that we would be conducting verification of their references, and then also schedule them for a pre-interview. We like the pre-interviews because they give us an opportunity to know the candidate a little bit better, some of their philosophy, how they their experiences, those kinds of things. Once we've completed that initial review, the team meeting is completed, if you will, the team of 5. We also package up, but we don't really package it up these days. We will transmit a copy of all of the completed applications to the school district for board members to review all of the applications prior to the next step of the process, which would be for us to come up to the district and help you determine who you're going to interview. We call that the board screening meeting. And so that process these days is we are starting to do that electronically through the cloud, and we would identify someone in district to receive them who at your end would then download the application with the attached alpha identifier and have them place them in a file and have them available for board members to come in one at a time to review the applications. So we think that that is a very important step of our process. We work for board members. We think board members' due diligence is to see all of the see who all has applied, and then we begin once we come in and we put our 6 people out there. Then we build that. We help you build that team using those 6 individuals as a starting point. But along the way, at the end, if you have 6 people who are offered interviews, it's your 6 people. We provide a starting point.
So, just to clarify on that, if we come in with the 6 and you say, we want these 5, but not so much this one, we'd rather have that, that's perfectly permittable at that time too. It's your decision, it's your feelings from the very beginning, and it's our recommendation to bring you just, 6 candidates, and then you deliberate on whether or not they're the ones that you want in the end.
If I could just have one moment to jump back to the one-on-one interviews for just to make a comment. At MSBA, we really like the one-on-one interviews. What's nice about a one-on-one interviews is that if you are inviting 30 people plus all board members to sit down with one of us and go through the 5 questions, what you've got is a guaranteed cross-section of voice within your community. It's really, really valuable, and some guaranteed feedback. Because sometimes when you hold, even if you could hold, 10 listening sessions. Throughout all 10 of those listening sessions, you may come up with only 30 people who will show up, a combined number. So, that number of 30 is good, but gosh, if you have that other 32 voices sitting down talking to us on a one-on-one basis, it really adds a lot of value to you, the board, as you're looking and thinking about your criteria or developing interview questions at a later time. So I just wanted the thought that I had.
Can I add one more thing? The other thing is that we want you to always have the opportunity for other voices to be heard. So at the end of the day, when people come back to you, you say it's a fair and open process. We had an opportunity to voice our opinion. Our population was well served because you were able to listen to us and understand that we had a voice in the process, okay?
Next up, we just would like to just take a few moments and just clarify, walk you through the information beginning on page 4 in the addendum. And just to clarify a couple of things. As we list at the top of the page, the professional search fee of $19,900, we think it's important to just note that we actually would actually propose to reduce the fee down, to $18,925, and that is because you had us in the district, I think in July, for an in-district hiring the right superintendent workshop. And so one of the things, that is normally a part of a search. And so we want to make sure that we reduce that down so that that is made clear to you as you're looking at that information. Well then, just jumping back up now, just to talk briefly through, as you can see, we've kind of broken it down to professional search services, our stakeholder engagement services, and other services, just as a starting point. So if you look at the 10 in-district meetings, that means the 10 times that we would meet just with you, the board. And that includes the planning meeting, the finalizing the hiring criteria and advertising meeting, interview training, finalist selection, first, second round of interviews, and the post-hiring workshop. Keeping in mind that we would anticipate your first round of interviews would probably be like a Wednesday, Thursday evening, or a Friday night, Saturday. Either way, it's probably going to be over 2 days. And the second round of interviews, as Sandy has already mentioned, we anticipate that there will be 3 consecutive days, 1 candidate per day. And so that wanted to give you a little bit of an idea. And then also understand, as Sandy mentioned, with the community engagement piece, with these steps of the process, we anticipate that most of them will involve having 2 MSBA search team members attending and help facilitating those kinds of things. And that is especially true when we get to the first and second rounds of interviews, that there would be 2 people here on site all the time, moving people around, answering questions, working with the board. Under the stakeholder engagement related activities, next up, we note that it's, as Sandy mentioned, 3 days in district. We don't really have a very good idea yet what that will look like, but as Sandy said, we would look to you for guidance. We can imagine a number of groups that we think you would like to have us visit with, but we won't really know that until you really tell us that these are important folks. We know that you'll want us to visit with staff. We know you'll want us to visit with administration. You want us to have some meetings that are open meetings in the community. But as Sandy said, we really think it's important for us to go where the folks are, who you want us to talk to get what is important to them. Because our experience, at least an experience that we found, we conducted a search in Wilmer, we found that folks who are from, not traditional white folks like myself, are not that comfortable coming into the school for meetings. We had to go to them. Even our online survey maybe was somewhat limiting for some of those folks, so we actually were able to go with someone who would talk those questions through and gather information that was helpful and beneficial to the board. So we kind of want to think about those things with you if we were the people who were chosen for that. The other area that I'd just like to mention to you is just the other services. That's all the support stuff. That's all the other folks at MSBA do to help back the team up and help us get from the beginning to the end of the search. And it's the folks who help us with the mailing and the receiving of the applications, the review, all of those kinds of things. Then I've already mentioned that we have a team of 5 people for each search, and who will help us review the applications when the time comes. And we determine who those people will be based on the needs of the district at that time. Then the other item we would just have you look at is just a reminder of the things that are included in the proposal but are not, that are optional, that you may decide you want or not want. And one of those is the posting on the select national sites. We're hoping that you want to do that because we think it's good reach for a more diverse clientele or access to folks. But we also understand that you may choose not to for whatever reason, and if that's the case, then that's your with the board's wishes. The other one is the mailing of the vacancy announcement. Again, we have set aside some dollars in there for the printing and the postage related to that, if that is something that you want. I would also say that we are finding that our colleagues, even in other state associations, they're mailing things out less and less. And that people are relying more and more on the postings on the websites and in emails. But that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be an occasional mailing of something to someone who we're specifically targeting. But a mass mailing is something, if you're looking at a saving measure, might be somewhere that you might look at if that's what has an interest to you. But we put it in there because we think it's still important, but it's not as essential as probably some other areas within the proposal. The other thing that we've included in there that's is an optional one is the verification of the semifinalists' educational and work history, that background review. We have made this an option for boards that, I'll be honest, no one has wanted it up till now. But we think it's a really good way to get a full review of the educational and the work history. Those are the 2 areas that seem to be areas where things may not be as straightforward as you might expect or want them to be. So it's a good way to gather that information up front in between the first and second round of interviews. So it's something that we would propose would be conducted on just probably 3 people and in between that period of time. And if you did decide to go that way, it would delay the time between the first round of interviews and the second round of interviews would be about a week then, because that's about how long it would take this team of people to turn those results around, unless they've determined a way to do it faster. So we just set aside money in there to, in case that is something that you would be interested in here. Then the other thing we would just mention under the not included piece, so we've sometimes had requests for strength finder type surveys. That's not something that we offer at MSBA, and if that was something that the district wanted, we would just that's something that would be your choice and that it would be something that you would do at your own expense. I do have to make note that this also doesn't include, we did not include anything in here for the translation services in the event that is needed. So I just wanted to also let you know, make that aware so that there's no misunderstandings. And then that I think that takes us, if I'm going in the right direction here, to Barb, who's been waiting here so patiently to kind of help bring us.
There. All right, so now we're going to briefly discuss the benefits of working with MSBA and your executive search service. I think the quality of our work is evident, partly through the process which Sandy and Sandy have outlined for you, but also our reputation. If you call our references, they will talk about the quality of the process and the quality of the teams that work on MSBA's behalf in executive search. So now I'm going to touch very briefly on the quantity, because I think that's an interesting facet of our team as well. If you take a look at MSBA's depth of experience, folks who have direct experience serving as school superintendents, the cumulative total on our team is 154 years of superintendent experience. If they've served as administrators in schools, there's another 152 years of experience. As school board members, the folks on our team have served 28 years in the exact same seats that you're sitting in right now. Executive search professionals, people who do this as part of their day-to-day life, there's 47 years of experience. And so you'll see the total in those 4 areas of the MSBA team is 381 years of experience. Now, if you want to throw in other public education specialists' roles such as teaching, coaching, a lot of that grassroots work in public education, it brings the total years of experience on our team to 504 years. And the formatting looks a little odd, but I'm sure you'll forgive me for that. So 504 years of team experience working for you on behalf of your search. So why MSBA? Sandy has already talked about this, but the school board's in charge. Everything that we do is through the lens of board leadership. I'm not going to review all of those things, but we're your organization. We're a membership-based association. And all of those things there, you probably already know about us. The knowledge, the teamwork, the accessibility, the national reach. We're very proud of our communication, keeping districts updated in the process where things are at. You will not be left in the dark if you're working with MSBA on your search. Sandy already talked about reaching out to individuals from districts of similar size and those who are more diverse, perhaps, and looking for candidates there. And we also offer these different options for engaging and gathering data from stakeholders. I think one of the things that makes us different is we don't assume anything about your stakeholders. Sometimes when people are making efforts to engage folks, they engage them on the terms they're used to, hosting them in the school, assuming everyone has transportation to get to the meeting, assuming that there is daycare at home or somewhere else so they can get there and participate. That's not fair, and you do not gather information from a cross-section of your community if you are not allowing for some of those circumstances that we may or may not have in our own lives. Now, one more thing I want to add to this list. Because we're a membership organization, it is very, very important to us to be able to offer our members a very reasonable and affordable cost model for executive search. The reason we do our search might be different than some other firms. We do it to serve our members because we are a membership and mission-driven organization. So if you want to look a little bit more deeper into why MSBA, it's because at the heart of what we do is our mission. Our mission is to support, promote, and strengthen the work of public school boards. That's what we do. That's what we're about. It's what happens every single day at MSBA. Now, how does that relate specifically to executive search? Well, throughout the process, we will support the work of the school board. We already do that. We'll continue to do it specifically around the executive search. We will promote this tremendous opportunity to candidates that might be a really good fit for your district, and we will strengthen the process you're using to search for a new superintendent, not only within your district, but also within your community. That right there is what we are all about, and that really drives our executive search process. So in conclusion, why MSBA? Well, first of all, we know you. We know you. We also know the state of Minnesota, and we know that we will be able to help you position this opportunity in the marketplace of Minnesota. We've also been with you through the ups and downs of board leadership. There are some challenges serving as board members. We have been with you and will continue to be with you throughout this process. And because of that, you know you can count on us. That's a given. We are here. We are not going anywhere. We have been a rock-solid presence for school boards in the state of Minnesota for 100 years. So for all of those reasons, we feel that we're the best fit for the Duluth superintendent search. And we'd now like to open it up for questions. Hopefully we have some time left.
Thank you so much for a great presentation. And we do have about 15 minutes for questions so that we can give a fair amount of time to the other company as well. So we can start with questions, and maybe if each board member first starts with one question, so everyone gets an opportunity to ask, that would be the process I think we'd like to go with. So do I see any lights on? Member Trinka, I will let you because you had it on first.
Well, the question I had earlier was procedural, and it was very specific, so I'm going to ask if I can sneak in like a question and a half. And my question was specific to the hand tabulation process that you had mentioned, Sandy. You're just going to be the three, Sandy. I know you're not Sandy. So how has that looked before in other districts? I think you were talking about it, that they could turn in it on a piece of paper. Do you just like bring surveys with you to meetings, or how has that worked in the past?
Yes, typically what they do is they submit it to Human Resources, and the Human Resources sends it on to us, and then we just assume that it's part of the count. So we we process it individually and then just add it to the tabulation with all the others.
Okay. I'm looking at Mr. Sporsky as just like maybe I thought maybe you had something to add in there. Okay. So I'm really curious about what your experience has been attracting. I know you talked about some of the national professional associations for Latino administrators and African American administrators. Can you talk about some of the successes that you've had attracting candidates of color, women, and otherwise subsectors of the population that we think are important to be represented in our voices here in the Duluth School District?
You know, our experience in attracting female candidates has improved greatly over the last few years. Our success in attracting candidates of more diverse backgrounds, other than by gender, has not been as great to speak, but in part, I think, due to some of the locations of the districts that we have worked with. Mm-hmm. And we understand that this district would require an aggressive outreach program, which we're prepared to do. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that, if I may add, wasn't in the years of experience, those cumulative years, is outside of those four areas. But for example, I mentioned when I started that I have joined MSBA in July. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I was the executive director of the YWCA in Mankato, and the mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. So my level of comfort with conversations around gender and race and diversity is very high. And prior to that, I was in marketing for about 25 years. So I think when you're talking about attracting a diverse pool of candidates, and diversity means all kinds of things, as you know. That space is something that I've inhabited personally, and I didn't put it on the list, but I think that's something that may also be of use when you're talking about positioning your job in the marketplace or currently. So, yeah, throw me in for another 25 years. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
May I add one more thing? Yes. I had told you that I was assistant superintendent of Burnsville Eagan Savage. It was very diverse in Burnsville Eagan Savage. We had to do a lot of different things to attract teachers of color in our district. And so we've been talking about some of those ideas, and we will share them with you if we're the group of choice, okay?
Excellent, thank you. And in terms of continuing to proceed, feel free when you ask a question to, if all three of you want to add to it, that's great. Thank you. Member Eder, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This question sort of has an A and a B part. When you talked a little bit, and you touched on it when you talked about your outreach in Wilmer. So what lessons have you learned since Wilmer when you think about engaging marginalized communities in listening sessions? And then the second part would be, and then what sort of training in inclusion and equity do you have in the search process? Because we know things like writing job descriptions and the way that you're going to present this job out in the public is important to make sure that the way that those job descriptions are written are inclusive, right? And then and you're taking equity language and inclusivity and sort of lowering. I'm stumbling right now. I had it much better a minute ago. What sort of trainings do you have in equity inclusion when you're writing job descriptions? And then how do you envision those lessons you learned from Wilmer going out in the public in Duluth and engaging marginalized communities to come in and talk about what they want to see in the next superintendent?
Wow. I'd hate to see what B is like, okay? Just so you know that kids use that kind of strategy too when they want to get two questions out of one.
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, again, I'm going to rely on my experience in Burnsville Eagan Savage because we had a highly diverse population. I found out as a principal that you don't expect them to come to you. Instead, you go to the high density areas. Once you go once, they are real receptive to bringing their whole crowd to you again because you've established a relationship. Sometimes it takes more than one. So the point is, we're going to go to the areas that you find are the most common gathering spots for certain populations so we get a voice from all of those areas. And not always will it be in a school or near a school. It might be other places like that. Then you asked about training or job description. We really don't do the job description, do we? You take that one.
We haven't done that much work around the job descriptions because generally they've been already developed in boards that we've worked with, and we've used that then along with their hiring criteria moving forward. And so I guess that's probably the answer that I've got for your question right now. We wouldn't be opposed to looking at it and working with it and helping through a lens of like Barb's lens here in terms of diversity to ensure that it reads what you want it to read, so it really exemplifies the person that you're looking for and the work that he or she will do once employed in your district.
I am going to add to that as well. The strategic plan at MSBA, one of the reasons I was interested in the organization is because front and center in the strategic plan for the organization is equity. And the same day I started at MSBA, Paula O'Loughlin also started at MSBA this year, and she has worked for a long time for Equity Alliance in the Twin Cities. And so I'll put a plug in for the leadership conference. There's a very exciting session on equity coming up that Paula is presenting. And our materials for executive search, we are routing through her for language that might not be as inclusive as it could be, or just blind spots we might have. So I think Paula's perspective and her history of working in areas of equity will be really, really valuable to us on this team.
Thank you. Member Lofold?
Well, these two got the questions that, really it is, that's a big concern for all of us. And I think going back just for the job description, as I've read and tried to prepare for our journey here, is that we are going to, as a board, probably define what we're looking for in a superintendent, which will somewhat then clarify a job description. I would imagine the actual job description is kind of pretty standard, but it is the qualities that we are looking for that are going to drive them to the candidates that they're going to screen. I have a number of just like little detail-y questions, but you somewhat want to get to those really kind of value-centered questions, so we know the firm we're hiring. So I want to know what you see the school board's role in those stakeholder meetings. Where are we at?
I think the approach that we've seen or have probably advocated is that in general, board members are not involved in the stakeholder meetings other than to tell us who you would like us to visit with and help share ideas of how we may access those individuals. And the reason that has been the case is that folks tend to be a little bit quieter when the board is present than when they're not present. And so that's the route we have taken with the stakeholder meetings. Did you have something?
How about the listening session, question and answer session is...
Are you asking about the question and answer session?
No.
Or just in general? Yeah, so what I was responding to is really the listening sessions. It's best if the board is not involved, other than to give us ideas of where you would like us to go and who you'd like us to visit with. But she's right, when you're talking about the Q&A session that's held in conjunction with the second round of interviews. Something that we've seen happen that is very effective is for those Q&A sessions for the board to be present at the back of the room, observing and listening to the Q&A sessions. And then once the Q&A session has been completed, then the board would then step up, to the board table and hold that candidate's actual school board interview. So it depends on kind of what you're thinking, what stakeholder means for what you might be thinking, I think, based on your question. So there are places to be involved, but probably not so much in the listening sessions. Sure, to clarify.
It's just, and I think that I have concerns about this, or I have ideas, but I think once we know what firm we're working with, but I know that it's important for us to get to the community, that's a really, really passionate part of what I'm looking for is a search that gets out to where they need to be and provide childcare or go to gathering places so that we can have conversation with the people we need to have conversation with. So I lost my train of thought. So
I'm going to jump in then.
I have 2 pages of questions. But.
I'm going to jump in and then.
Yes.
Okay. I want to make sure Member Kirby also has an opportunity. I really appreciated how you shared your perspective on community outreach, and I think you're hearing a trend here that's important to us, and I think it's important to all of our board members that the community piece is major there. I have a question, though, on how do you work with the candidates to prepare them for coming here? And, particularly people who might not be from Minnesota, or how do you work with the candidates to get them prepared for whatever piece of the process? Okay.
I think one of the first things we do is, answer any questions they may have about the district. Well, in the outreach, talk with them about the benefits of moving to whatever community or living in whatever community it may be. What's, the services available for themselves, and if they have a family, for their family. So it's some basic questions about the community and then about the job itself. And then if they are one of the folks that we are then looking at who, during our screening meeting, who rises to the top, then the next step would be that we would contact each of them and ask them, well, first of all, ask them if they're still interested in the job. If they were offered an interview, would they accept it? Those kinds of things. And then we also ask them, what questions do you have for us? And then at that point in time, they'll ask some questions, and we can begin some additional, provide them with additional information to help, like you say, prepare them either for an interview without giving them the interview questions, of course, but just help them to feel comfortable with the steps of the process. And one of the big ones that we do is we remind everyone, first of all of the remaining steps of the process. When the first round of interviews will be held, the second round of interviews, and just ask them to, how does your schedule look for those days? Not just kind of getting an inkle, if you will. And talking about losing trains of thought, I just lost mine on whatever I was going to say. Yeah, darn, it'll come back to me. But
the pre-interview?
We conduct the pre-interviews, and that's another real important part of the process. It helps us to get to know the candidates better, but it also helps us to kind of identify any potential problem areas that we can help them address. As they work their way through interviews, we provide them whatever information the board feels should provide them in order to provide that level playing field for all candidates. So, for instance, if they're saying, there will be 17 questions, we want you to tell them that there'll be 17 questions. It's a strict 1 hour piece. There'll be a written component. We tell them those kinds of things so they begin that mental note or preparation. Sometimes boards will ask us to send things specifically for them to read so that they can be prepared to respond to. The same thing would happen for the second second round of interviews. And then, but if they're the selected candidate, we provide them with, we talk with them about the contract, but we do not get involved with the contract negotiations between the board and the chosen or selected candidate. So we will answer some basic questions about the previous superintendent's contract, but again, not be involved in that actual negotiation. And then once they are selected, we help them with transition-related kinds of items. Mm-hmm.
Also, in terms of candidates, one of the things that we'll do is work with you as a board on the messaging and what it is you want to say makes you special. Because I think when you're talking directly to candidates, you don't want to paint a picture of sunshine and roses if it's not. And this is a tremendous opportunity for the right candidate. And so you need to be authentic in your messaging to your candidate prospects. You really do. You have to be different than perhaps some other opportunities they might be looking at the same time, because you really truly want the best fit, not just for your superintendent on the end, but your candidates. You want your candidate pool and the folks you choose to interview to really understand this district, this community. So if someone says, is it cold up there? We're not going to say, no, it's not too bad. I mean, you have to be authentic with your messages. And so that's what we'll work with you on the front end of this to ensure that our conversations with these folks are real. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay.
And thank you, Barb. If I were to ask a second question in a one-part question, it was going to be that follow-up about how do you prepare the board for how we're messaging our district. So thank you for responding to that. Member Kirby?
This follows up with some of these questions. We're not only hiring a superintendent, we're hiring a partner, if they have one. And having been involved in previous searches for other candidates, if the partner's not happy, the people we want won't be happy and won't stay. So to what degree are you involved in that, or do you advise us on how to handle that part of the...
I think that's a really good question. Our experience has been that we haven't advocated for a formalized process for partners, in part because it from our perspective, it creates an expectation that there'll be a second person attending everything with someone who may not have that second person, and it creates maybe some perception problems in that regard. So that is something that has not been a part of our process up to this point. Mm-hmm. But if I could say, we understand that it's important, though. And there are other ways that I think people have probably worked that through by answering questions and those kinds of things.
I just wanted to just jump in real quick, because you guys came a long way and everybody's spending their time. So I want to make sure you get your questions answered. So if we need a little bit more time, we can do that.
Okay. I just wanted to check. We can do a few more questions, getting the go-ahead from Mr. Swarsky, so that's good. Board members, if you want to quickly go around with any additional or think for a minute of any additional questions, now would be the chance. Member Trinka? And then keep in mind, we'll try and everyone have one more round of questions. So.
Okay, yep. So how do you see, what do you see your role and our role as being in using this superintendent search as an opportunity to highlight all of the good that's happening in ISD 709?
Well, I think one of the most important ways is gathering information for the vacancy announcement. Because usually we are always looking for what does the board perceive are the district's points of pride and the things you want to put front and center that can be used as a way to attract a candidate to a district. They look at something and they say, hey, wow, look at that. I want to be part of that. And those are the same types of things that when folks reach out to us, we share that information. They like, what's going on in the district, what might be coming down the pipeline, that's great. We would have that opportunity to share that with them. One of the things we do at the planning meeting is work through a process where we do ask, well, what do you as a board think are the strengths? What do you as a board think are the opportunities of the district? So we have that understanding of what are the good things, but as Barb said, our experience has been is if there are things out there that need to be dealt with, it's best to be upfront about them because folks will figure them out anyway. It's a great but it becomes a great opportunity for the right candidate. I hope that answered.
The other thing that we found is the process itself gets everybody excited about the district, and they're really feeling good because it's an open, clear, positive process where lots of voices are heard. So in the end, everybody's, there's a big celebration at the end. We hired a superintendent. This fit our criteria. We were a voice, and they feel like they have an ownership in this person, which is always a great start to begin a career in your district.
I just have two sort of quick detail type questions. So do you check off-list references or not?
What was that?
Do you check off-list references of the candidates or not? So do you just, like, when we go through reference checking, do you guys then, when you go through enter?
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the first part of
Sorry.
it. You said off-list, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, when we conduct our verification of references, we check references that have been provided, but we also look at other sources.
Okay, and then the second small piece of that, did you say in the first part you would send 6 applications forward, or did you say we will have access to all the applications?
Yeah, 100% all of them.
Okay.
But what we would do is bring forth 6 to start the conversation.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Member Littlefield, quick question, and if you don't, we can move on.
Can you just go with, because that was the one I was
Sure. In the preparation that you do at the beginning meetings, will you spend time just making sure we're following the law on the process? And I know you did touch on that during the training this summer, but that might just be helpful to kind of expand on that. Okay.
Yes, we will. We will begin with a reminder that all of the meetings are in open session, no provision to close anything. We'll talk at great length about the privacy of the data and who has access to that information. And we'll continue to bring that up throughout the process, laying the groundwork for the screening meeting, which is actually critical in terms of maintaining privacy of data, because if board members follow the law and maintain the privacy of that data, it's better for the pool in general. For all searches. And so it really is critical to follow the law in that area, especially, all of them.
And I can vouch for that because on my very first day at work, I'd only been there about 2.5 hours, and Sandy sat me down and said, let's talk about the open meeting law and data privacy, okay? I had only been there 2.5 hours. So I'll vouch for that. She means it.
And then as a superintendent, what I found was valuable was some even give you language for how you post each one of the meetings, because you have to be within the letter of law also. So if that's a service, I found that very helpful too.
Thank you. Member Kirby?
Just quick, and this may be difficult. Do you have any idea of what number of candidates we could expect in some broad range? I mean, and what do most districts get? What are we likely to get?
Yeah, and I thought, wow, I've been in this business a long time and I've never seen that. But, it's hard to know. The answer is very much location-driven, reputation-driven. But I would hope that, a kind of a safe landing spot seems to be maybe 18 to 20 completed applications, I would hope. But now within that, maybe not all folks will be equal in their qualification. But I would hope for more. It's possible you would have fewer too. It's very hard to know how much other competition there will be out there, those kinds of things.
I have my question out, but they can answer it really quickly if you.
Okay, go ahead, Member Littlefield.
So, one is, how many searches are you currently doing right now throughout?
Currently, we just finalized I kind of have to say them because I haven't done the math yet, but they're not that many that I can't keep the math straight. But we just finished up the Hastings interim search last night, or Hastings, I mean. We're conducting the search of St. Clair, Detroit Lakes, Hermantown, and that's it right now. Okay, so we're at 4, but.
And then, is there anywhere in your process where you suggest that the school board have at least one kind of central liaison member of our team that is somewhat whatever that's called.
Yeah, that's a really great question, and the answer is yes. Who would be the person that we would liaise with at a staff level? We noticed that in your materials you were looking for someone who could work with your HR director and some of the management or interactions, and the answer is yes, that might be one person. But we also look for a person within the board who would be the person we'd send updates to, and then that person then shares it with the rest of the board, like at the board meetings, those kinds of things. So that would be somewhat a best practice, I think.
Just a follow-up to that we did talk about at the training, but that our communications person also plays a big role. Do you want to just touch on how you've worked with other communications people throughout the process as well?
Yeah, we learned when we conducted the Moorhead search that they also had and that's one example where they employed a communications person. And usually what happened is we would put together like maybe the first draft of a news release. We would send it to that person. That person would review it and add additional information to it. And we found ourselves collaborating quite a bit back and forth on those kinds of news releases. We also found that person in that district, because of their past practice, preferred that requests from the media be handled through the communications department in the district, but the communications person, staff member, would contact us and get the information that he or she needed to answer those questions. So we see ourselves working alongside them to make, that help them provide the information that they need to have about the search, where things may be at that's providable at that time. Mm-hmm. It worked really well, actually. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, good with questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome,
for
and thank you.
Excellent presentation and background information. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So we'll take just a 5-minute bathroom break and give some time for the next group to get set up.
Yes, yes. That's why it's deceiving, because it looks like it's like.
It's kind of cool to go out there and I'm not a hockey player, but skate, open and skate. If it freezes, it's really clear as you can see.
My family comes this area. But we do, a lot of times we go to Lutz. So, yes, not the other state. I tried that, and I went to purchase it's 30 below, and I didn't have any of my winter clothes on. And I said, oh, I can't do this.
3 years ago, I tried on in my backyard. Kids were absolutely ran into the neighbor's garage. I couldn't stop, so I said,
Yeah, you can break something.
I still
Thank you, ladies. Thanks for coming.
I just got my MSBA book or catalog, and I know I'm excited about the conference. Are you board members sort of signed up already? It's a great thing going on. Yeah, I'm going to relocate it. Well,
We'll try not to say evil.
Okay. Okay, we're going to get started to just give equal time and honor everyone's time here. Thank you again, board members, for the amount of time we're devoting to this process. And again, welcome. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves, and we will just briefly highlight kind of our years on the board, and then, then we'll turn it over to you for your presentation. You'll have about 45 minutes, and then we'll leave some time for questions at the end. So do your presentation, then we'll do questions. Okay, and so I'm Rosie Leffler-Camp, and I'm the board chair. I am in my second term on the board, my sixth year serving on the board.
This is Crash Bandicoot. This is our mild mannered.
I know. Now you know who the wild card is over there. Kirby just causing problems.
If you know David, he really...
Is all I can say. That is so something I would do.
Start to show the stunt.
All right, well, we don't need that one, so we'll put it down there. So I'm David Kirby, finishing my fourth year on the board. That's the first time I've ever done that.
And you're coming back. Congratulations.
Thanks. Just reelected, yeah.
Excuse me, I'm Sally Trinka. I'm in my second year.
I'm Kelly Eater, and I'm appointed to the board. I started November 1st.
Welcome. I'm Jill Lofald, and I am on my second year as well. First term, second year, elected the same time with Sally.
Hit the button. See, Kirby, I didn't knock it over, but forgot to turn it on. I'm Dr. Kathleen Williams, and I'm with my colleague, Dr. Nicholas Wall. We're here representing BWP. We're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves before we begin, but I just want to give you a brief overview of what we're hoping to accomplish during this presentation. In front of you, you have the exact same PowerPoint that we're projecting. And you also have an additional copy of my resume. The original resume you received in the proposal was our one-page quick review, and I provided to you a more extensive resume just so that you would have a bigger picture, and if you had any additional questions that you wanted to ask. So tonight, we're going to try to share with you who we are as a search firm and how we can go about hopefully meeting your needs for the next superintendency. And at least two of you, I'm guessing this is your very first superintendent search. And probably one of the most important hires you'll ever have, and it's probably one of the most exhilarating, in my opinion, experiences you'll ever have. And we'll try to explain how we can make that very rewarding for you. So we're going to tell you a little bit about who BWP is, what we do, how we do it, the specifics of the proposal that we gave to you, and tell you a little bit about why we think as consultants we are probably what we believe to be a really, really good match to assist you. We've been doing a lot of reading about your district, not just on the news media, but the wonderful work that you've done, like through your educating and inspiring Duluth's children, and I've looked at your policies and been online to all your departments. So I think we have a really good handle on who you are, but we're also interested at some point in time of having just a very healthy dialogue with you. That's probably the most important part of this, because we want to serve you. So the more we talk about it, the more we can tell you and hopefully inform you. So, as I said, I'm Kathleen Williams. I've been in education for over 40 years, the last 18 as a superintendent of schools in Kansas, the Chicago suburbs, and then most recently until June 30th of 2017, I was superintendent of schools in Wausau, Wisconsin. And I came up frequently to the Lake Superior area, but never went around the corner to make it here. So it's a delight to be here. My background, just real quickly, I have served as a teacher, as elementary, middle school, high school principal, assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, assistant superintendent for staff operations, which means in the largest elementary school district in the state of Illinois, which means any problem that went from the elementary school to the district office came to me. I was due process hearing officer and everything in between. I've been in rural, suburban, urban school districts. I've worked with large populations of Muslim children, Native American, Jews, Wausau, 25% Hmong, African Americans, Hispanic, etc. Nick.
Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks for having us here tonight. First of all, I want to commend you with your mission statement that's up on our presentation. I believe in that because you're talking about every student that you want to reach to have a productive, fulfilling life as a citizen and in the wider world. I have stepped away from traditional superintendency after 16 years and been working in the equity world, trying to find equity and opportunity and access partners across the United States to really make sure that we don't miss any of these children that are in our schools that have the potential but are missing from the rigorous courses that allow them to succeed. So I commend you, first of all, in your mission statement. Tonight we're going to have a conversation, and hopefully a conversation. We want to have a dialogue about, we know the why. You're looking for a superintendent. The what is, we have the opportunity to find that pool of candidates to fit a profile that will be developed by listening to you, your stakeholders, and your community. And the how is what we'll spend more time on with today. There's no doubt you guys could do a superintendent search. The how is the challenging part. We have an opportunity to reach into a broad network of colleagues across the Midwest, including your fine state of Minnesota, to look for that fit that is developed from you and your community. So that's really what I'm going to talk about tonight. We know the why and the what. Now we're going to spend a lot of time on the how to see what we can do. I spent 31 years in public schools. I'm a strong advocate for public schools and what we do and how we do it and the importance of educating all students. I have been at every level like Kathleen, elementary, middle, high school, as a teacher, coach, athletic director, principal, assistant superintendent, and in 16 years as a superintendent of schools, 11 in Illinois, just outside of Chicago, and then 5 in Indiana. And it's exciting to be here, and we're thankful for this time. And with that, we're going to move through some slides and have a conversation. Anytime you want to have a dialogue, let us know, because this is about you. So if there's something you want to talk about, let's do it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just wanted to say in terms of the process, we'll have you present and then we'll ask questions after.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. We appreciate doing that. Thank you. Who we are. You are talking and looking at two representatives of the firm that has done over 800 successful executive searches. BWP is a combination of 3 search firms that came together, the Harold Webb Association, P&R, and the Bickert Group. I was with the Bickert Group when I started working for BWP. I actually knew one of the founders, and he was a superintendent on the North Shore at New Trier. But what I wanted you to know is we have a long network and tradition of having successful searches and working with boards across the United States, with definitely an emphasis in the Midwest and central part of the United States. There are 8 partners in the firm. Kathleen and I are one of the 40 associates. Our executive director is Dr. Deborah Hill, African-American female, who is leading the organization now. We have superintendents, active and retired, like Kathleen and I. Some faculty, some board members, 35% of BWP associates and our partners are women or minority representation. Offices in Illinois, Texas, and D.C. One of the things we bring in the how is the networking to professional organizations across the U.S. And there's a list of some of them, AASA, NASB, and Go ahead, Kathleen.
Well, I was just going to say, if you would like that translated.
We can do that.
We can do that. So, American Association of School Administrators, the National Association of, School Boards. The Association for Supervision and Curriculum and Development, the Illinois Association of School Administrators, and the next one, School Board, the Illinois Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development. That's on there a couple times because our executive director was president of that, and she's pretty darn proud of that. The Association for School Business Officials, both nationally and Illinois, the National Association of Black School Executives, the Midwest Superintendents Association, and the American Latino Superintendents Association of Superintendents.
And I've had the good fortune of presenting at the last couple of NASB conferences on equity and strategic planning. And MSSA is a superintendent organization for Midwest superintendents. I got to know some of the Minnesota representatives in my time there. I was a member in Illinois and Indiana. Each of the states can get 10 superintendents nominated. So I had the good fortune of serving Indiana and Illinois in that capacity. But it's fantastic networking where you have people come together and talk about best practice, talk about challenges, and talk about working together to solve these problems and challenges.
I, too, have presented at AASA, NASB, ASCD, and so on. And if you want to know what I presented, I'll tell you later.
Okay, simply, our goal is to identify and present a slate of well-qualified candidates for leadership positions, in this case, superintendent for Duluth Public Schools. Very simply put. This is a list of current active clients with our firm that we're doing searches on right now, and the district, state location, and enrollment of the schools. Thought that'd be a reference point for you.
Right, and you'll notice there's different sizes, and our organization seeks out the consultants that can best associate with those enrollments and types of students.
And you can see we're a variety from urban to suburban to small to very comprehensive.
Can I just, is this Madison, Wisconsin that you're finding?
Yes.
Were you just brought in as the firm for that?
Yeah, these are active searches.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
Just like last month or something?
Well, it wasn't that long ago that they were hired, and I was asked to serve on that team. So, and they just had some meetings the end of October, and I was going to be out of town, so I had to bow out on being one of the consultants. So it's pretty new, yes.
Yeah.
I've been watching them as they've gone through their search.
Well, I've been watching Madison go through many searches over time. Yeah.
And as I said in the beginning, we're going to highlight the how, and the objectives is providing excellent assistance to you, the board, which results in a school leader that matches your needs. We're looking for a fit, bottom line, something that fits you and the leader that fits coming into your organization. We'll outline a suggested timeline. Our objective is to meet that timeline to identify the candidate so that you have your superintendent in place in a timely fashion for next school year. Involving your community and staff is a significant portion of what we do. We are very strong advocates of stakeholder engagement, feedback to you. Obviously, we know the decision lies with the board, but we want to be there to give you as much information as you can from each other and the community to make an informed decision.
And you involved over 2,000 people in the educating and inspiring Duluth's children, and we can engage as many people, and we'll tell you how in a minute, to make sure every stakeholder has a voice for you. And how you choose to involve them beyond that would be something that you all would need to, we can discuss and you can decide upon.
Our commitment is to complete a successful search on behalf of you, the board representing Duluth. By aggressively recruiting well-qualified candidates, we will search and target, matching the profile that is developed from you and your community, meeting your expectations, the deadlines we give to you to bring the best candidate back for you to consider and to talk to about becoming your next leader as superintendent. That's our commitment. The process is four-phased. Now, some of the stuff that we have in the packet we put into the appendix as reference point because we don't want to just be the firm that does a slide deck and walks out. That's not us. That's not how we do business. But we do have a process that is customized. I think that's the most important word in this slide. Customized to seek out a slate of finalists who meet your needs at Duluth. This is not a canned program. There's a process in place. Don't get us wrong. But this is customized to your needs. And when we would sit with you in the planning session, we would customize what you're looking for with your history, with your vision for the district. So this is definitely a Duluth search.
I don't believe there's been one search that we have done that's replicated at all exactly what other districts have done.
We look at best practice and process, but the customized search is for you. And there are three components and parts. And I'll flip through them: specification, recruitment, assessment, and selection. So planning meeting with the board, which would be a significant component. Kathleen, you want to take this one?
No, you're doing just fine.
I
will. I was just joking.
We've known each other for a while. We've worked together.
So the first thing that we need to do is have a planning meeting with you. We need to talk with you about what are your parameters for this. We've given you in the appendix a draft timeline to give you an idea of what's possible, but you all have crazy schedules, and I looked at your calendar to see when your breaks were and everything that was going on. I think this kind of should fit. It misses your annual meeting, and I think we're good there, but you need to set and finalize the timeline. You need to identify any customized services you want, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and allow us to launch initial recruitment efforts to get the job posted and out there. The specifics of that of the job description, the characteristics that you're looking for, will come later after you have that input. We'll get a web-based application program going for ease of applicants to give us their information. And we can talk about the community engagement piece. Nick and I both strongly believe that if there's an important decision, it's critical to involve those who are going to be impacted by a decision in some way, shape, or forms. But you need to let us know to what degree you want that involvement, and we'll make it happen. We'll post some of the things we do is we provide forums. We post an online survey so everybody can give you feedback. We look at who's important in your community. Do you have post-secondary educators that you want involved? Certainly you want students engaged, and parents, and your business partners, people who vote for those referenda but don't have kids in school. You let us know, and we'll make that happen, and we'll facilitate those meetings. We want to identify the experience and the skills of the candidates that really match, if not all, the majority, the priorities that you're looking for. So that profile that's created by all of that input from you, your stakeholders, is critical. And then we'll update the posting to put that very specific information in, saying this is what the candidate needs to possess, etc. And then we'll continue recruiting.
And as Kathleen said, in this process, it builds off of each other. The planning meeting, launch recruitment, community engagement is significant. I've utilized it with BWP. I've utilized it as a superintendent to replace any principals that I've had that retired or moved on to other opportunities. I've always utilized where I'm engaging the stakeholders, parents, students, employees, community, and business, even for building principals, because you get a tremendous amount of feedback on that building, in this case on your district, that can really, it's almost like you're conducting an internal needs assessment to really get you some information that we would look at documents like the one that you guys produced with over 2,000 citizens. All that goes into this so that when we get to step 4, that profile that is presented to you from Kathleen and I will be representing your community. As we said in the commitment to you, we will recruit quality candidates that match the leadership profile. That's going to be our guide, looking for that fit, because we know how much feedback was given to you from the community and you to us to develop that profile. We will advertise nationally on websites and to the groups that we just talked about earlier. We will send information to those members to look for their recommendations and or some of them to be interested. They're part of the BWP network and seek nominations from that extensive network and your input. We will target and make personal contacts with highly successful leaders that we believe fit the profile and should have a consideration for the leadership position as superintendent of Duluth schools. And then we'll start pre-screening applicants that meet the profile match.
In terms of assessment, once we receive all of the applications, we receive them online, and we go through every single one, and we measure it against all the qualities, characteristics, strengths, filling your needs, and ultimately we match. I just saw an error.
Mm-hmm. We do math too.
We do match, we do the math to find the best fit for you, and then we look into their backgrounds, their online profile, criminal you are required to do a criminal background check, but we will go online. Any public records we will go into to see what's outstanding, whether it's a speeding ticket or whatever is on the books. We are pretty thorough at doing that. And then we will meet with you, and generally we will present a slate of 4 to 6 candidates. That could change depending upon the strength of the pool and the match that we find. In the last search that I did, we actually brought 7 candidates forward. It just depends. If there's somebody that we feel strongly about, we'll bring them to you. And we will share the background, the information. You'll be able to see everything, for the most part, that they've submitted to us at that meeting.
And then selection process will feed off of that. We'll prepare you as we'll present the slate to you and walk through each candidate and their profile and their experiences. Then we'll talk to you and prepare you for interviewing the candidates, listen to you, talk to you about some of the strategies that you may want to consider when interviewing, and some of the questions you can ask and some that you can't, and walk through that process with you. Generally, it's three finalists. We'll talk to you about tools and instruments that you can use. Process and scheduling we'll assist you with, because we are definitely lining up your schedules, the candidate schedules, to get them in. Assist with developing a strategy for community input if you so choose. Some of our clients will utilize a search committee of representative community leaders to be part of the committee. It's really up to you. This is the customization part. You may say, Kathleen and Nick, we'll do that. That's okay. That's totally up to you. We'll walk through that and do whatever you're comfortable with as community leaders. Strategies for building consensus around a choice. We'll talk to you about that. Some interest-based problem solving that may be helpful to you as you look at shared interests of the community and yourself, the board, to facilitate how you get to that final decision, that final candidate. And then obviously we want to get the person to sign on the line and be an employee of Duluth Public Schools. That's important to get them to the finish line in a graceful, dignified way, and a way that allows there to be a nice transition and nice momentum as they begin their process with you and you with them.
I want to underscore, going back up to number 1, where we identify key questions that you may want to consider asking. If you'll notice, it's followed by "and rubrics to evaluate and rate responses." This allows you to have an anti-bias rating scale so that you're all on the same page. This is what these ratings specifically mean. So you all come to agreement and well, if this person falls over here, it may not be the 10 you were thinking of. So that's something we can help you with too, which I think is very important. So you all are not showing a bias because you thought the candidate had a great hairdo or a nice suit or, whatever.
We do have a guarantee. We'll be on call throughout the process and the year following the selection of your superintendent. We'll also mentor your new superintendent in questioning board consultation at no cost for the implementation year after they're appointed. If selected, if the candidate does not complete 2 years, we will come back and repeat this search for just expenses. That's a guarantee.
And again, I just want to underscore, we're going to help you find what we hope is the best candidate. And
Absolutely.
It's incumbent upon us to help that person be successful. And you can get people who come in that may have experiences in one area and not the other. And we want to be that bridge to continue helping you. And if you have questions like, whoa, how do we handle this? We will be there for you, because that's what gives us pride in our organization, is we just don't do the search, collect the check, and say, see ya. We really want to see it through.
And we want there to be success for you and the new superintendent. And then there's some options for advertising. Madam Chair, do we have 15, 16 minutes? Is that right? I want to be sensitive on time.
Have about 15 minutes, yep.
Okay, I'm going to go through this. This can be something you reference. These are just some things to advertise the position.
No, but
Okay.
then we,
Sure.
Okay, thank you. The Q&A is then after that? Thanks for clarifying. I appreciate that.
So you actually have 15 minutes to talk more with us.
Okay.
Or then we have even more time.
Thank you.
To answer your questions.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. This is a draft calendar because, as Kathleen said, this would be something we work on with the planning meeting with you initially to really fine-tune it, to customize it to your needs and the schedule that your schedules, and make this thing work. But this is a draft of where we'd be from starting today. We're presenting. Soon after, we would like to sit with you in a planning meeting the week of December 2nd through the 12th to cover an array of topics that are listed parenthetically there for your consideration. We want to walk through all this because I learned long ago if people aren't up on it, they're down on it. We want you to be totally up on this process, totally informed on timelines, planning meetings, liaisons, who are the point people in Duluth for us, application process, all these things in here, so that when you walk out of that planning meeting sometime between December 2nd to the 12th, you not only understand the process, your feedback was validated too in the process. We'll begin then, and we would propose the 16th to the 20th to sit with each of you individually and interview you and talk to you about strengths, maybe some gaps that you think we have, some challenges on the road ahead as it looks at Duluth Public Schools. Stakeholder focus groups, that will be something we talk to you about in the planning meeting. Who do you want on those stakeholder focus groups? What are the business leaders, what are the service leaders in your community that should be part of this focus group? We get those people from you and your leaders, and we'll sit with them and facilitate the same kind of process with them we are with you. And that's all to develop a leadership profile. We'll close the online surveys around January 10th, come back to you between the 13th and the 24th to share and have you look at and approve the leadership profile that we will then champion and look for that fit. We propose closing this search at the end of February. We would then look at screening and interviewing candidates to develop the slate for you. Kathleen and I would be working very diligently once we have that profile to get the match and get these candidates in front of us so that we can present a slate to you March 9th through the 13th, which gives you time then. Yes, March is going to be a busy month.
When we developed this, I was looking at when your spring break is, and this takes you before it, so you can actually enjoy it.
That's a good move. And again, this will be customized. Remember, this is a draft, just for a timeline.
We recognize.
To show you that we can get this to you prior to your spring break. Get the second round of interviews in. Many times the superintendent finalist contingent on the planning meeting. You want them to visit your schools. You may have that search committee that you may or may not have that what they meet with. You may want a board dinner and another interview over board, meal with them. So those things will be built in March just to kind of humanize the process.
I mean, going along with that, and I cannot underscore this enough, and I tell boards this all the time. Candidates are interviewing you as much as you are interviewing them. And you want them to be able to want to come here. And I cannot tell you that sometimes doesn't happen because people they haven't seen the community. They haven't seen the schools. They haven't interacted with anybody but you. And they are going to more than likely want to move here and in some instances enroll their children in your schools. And you're going to want, this is an opportunity to welcome them if they have a partner or a spouse. It's a nice time for maybe somebody to show them around. When I went to Lawrence, Kansas, somebody took my husband golfing, which hit a home run with him. You know, he didn't care what I had to say. He liked the golf course, but it just makes you feel, it makes the candidate feel welcome. So just keep that in the back of your heads.
It's that as humanistic piece that really look for that connection, that fit both ways. Because when we can get that fit and really do the humanization that Kathleen's showing examples of, there'll be traction and nice transition. And as Kathleen and I know, sitting here at 34 years of superintendent experience, we spend a lot of time with the board. You guys spend a lot of time with your superintendent. And you want that to be a relationship built on trust, built on some place that you both want to be at the same time. Our commitment, again, is, why us? We are committed to doing this to really, it goes back to the commitment in our minds, successful search on your behalf, with all the parts in between to find you that fit. That's our commitment to Duluth Public Schools. And we thank you. Just for reference, as I told board member coming in, in the appendix, we include a fee structure that was in the proposal, potential additional expenses, our track record as a firm, and that's our home office. So those are there for reference. I'm not a big advocate of neither one of us just have a slide deck and walk out of the room. We're about having conversations, so thank you.
Yeah, sure. You can take your time if you just want to breeze through that to come up.
You shut your light off. Okay, thank you. So what we did is we'll go around and each board member can ask a question and then do that for the next 20 minutes or so. Just kind of back to your consultant fees. I just wanted to make sure I understood your paperwork. The point about advertising, any of those options for advertising would be in addition to the additional expenses. Is that right? I just want to make sure I'm understanding the slides.
The one up here.
With all of those, you just passed it.
It was on page,
Yep, there it is.
options for advertising. That would be an additional
Yes.
cost.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, those are options.
Okay, great.
You don't have to do them all. Those are just possibilities, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that slide. Member Trinka, we'll have you begin, but then I'm going to jump over to Member Kirby, being he kind of came in last. But yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Mike, thank you for leading into my question well, Chair Lefkoe. My question is two-part. I'm a little bit confused about page 21 says that the fees include A, B, C, D, E, but then there are additional expenses on page 22 that to me seem like they're duplicative of what's on page 21, slide 21 and 22. And I was confused about this in the proposal too. Like the postage, clerical, administrative.
That is part of the 20,000 fees. And then you're asking what's the difference here? These are additional.
Because it also says the clerical administrative support, and that's if you ask for any additional services.
Okay. Right. So my question then, with that clarifying, is I'm the chair of the business committee, and I spend a lot of time looking at budgets, and I know what we've budgeted for this. How do you help work with boards to prevent financial scope creep? And then how do we also, as a part of this, because you don't have offices in Minnesota, but clearly you have a lot of experience working up in this area. I guess I'll just ask the question about the finance. How do you help us keep finances tight as we go through this process? Because it's easy for things to start to spread.
We generally have identified for you the calendars, so you'll know how many times we would be coming here. So that is pretty hard and fast in terms of us being able to tell you that. And you'll tell us up front at the planning meeting, we want to have a really broad swath of advertising in a lot of unique organizations or some very expensive ones. Like there is a publication called Ed Week. It's very expensive. And I would tell you, I don't think you need that. I'll tell you that now, no offense to Ed Week if they're sitting in the room. But the American Association of School Administrators is where most every single administrator will look. And the Minnesota Association of School Administrators is a member. So they're pretty much linked. But they charge if you just want to do there's always a charge for somebody. And we can say, how big of a swath do you want to have, and what kind of a budget do you want to have for that?
Right, and to your question, you tell in the planning meeting, you say this is the budget, we will not exceed it.
Yeah, you say you can't go past this.
And as Kathleen said, these are our planning meetings where we have to travel up here and back, and if you say this is what it is, that's no problem.
But that doesn't mean that we still can't convene some meetings. If you narrow your budget, I created distance learning classrooms in Wausau, Wisconsin. And we had students having back and forth discussions with the University of Wisconsin classes that they sat in. So we could do some distance learning if you wanted us to. Doing FaceTime doesn't work for large groups, but we could even do that. We're pretty creative. And I think we could make it work for you. There are times where I'm going to be real honest with you. I'll be real honest with you all the time. But I'm going to say this is a time we're going to need to sit down face to face.
Thank you. Member Kirby, go ahead.
Thanks. This is more of a process. On page 16, if you were to be hired, an initial position is posted, that's just saying that just
what
out
we do
there and then
is
the criteria.
once you take official action and you sign a letter of agreement and hire us, we post it immediately on our website saying there is a position in Duluth, Minnesota, and we will immediately begin working with your communications coordinator or whoever it is to gather information about how you would describe Duluth and how you have described the what about us, and we can get that out. We will add to that once you've identified the specifics of what you're looking for through that input.
And I'd comment too. The window, there are different windows of searches. You're in a good window. You're getting this will be posted prior to Thanksgiving. And having been in the chair looking at positions, that's when administrators start to, if they're looking to grow or looking for opportunities, that's when they start looking, and that's when we start networking. So you are, as a board and a community, you're in the optimal window to replace a superintendent.
Thank you for clarifying that. That is something that our HR director has also been highlighting through this process as we've been going through it, is kind of some of the windows of opportunity. So thank you for verifying that. And
absolutely.
We often have said our current superintendent gave us this gift of time. So next, Member Eder, do you have a question? Okay.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I want to talk a little bit about how you envision engagement of our marginalized communities within Duluth in the listening sessions. Specifically, you talked a little bit about the online survey, and as I'm sure you know, there are times when those online surveys aren't accessible to populations within the community that you're trying to work with. And then sort of piggybacking off of that, when we're going through and you're looking and you're writing and we collectively are writing the leadership profile, how do you think about making sure that language of that profile is inclusive and equity centered? Because as you know, when you write these job descriptions, there's language that can be used in those descriptions that immediately shut off certain populations from wanting to apply. So how do you, I guess, globally think about engaging marginalized populations within communities like Duluth? And then looking at making sure that you're reaching leadership that would be reflective of those population or leadership prospects.
So when we're talking with you at our planning meeting, I am making the assumption that you know exactly who those communities are. And generally speaking, there is usually a person or a group that is your go-to person. When I was in Wausau, there was a Hmong center, and there were people that I networked on a routine and regular basis with because they felt very marginalized. And we were always working on that. So they had to be part. And we in Wausau did a lot of translating into that language for them, and we I don't know that we have anybody on staff that could translate anything into Hmong here, but if we needed to, we could look for that. I know that I am not sure I am going to pronounce this correctly, because I was going to ask you, is it Misa Bekong Ojibwe immersion program? Did I totally mess up that name? So I'm thinking there is somebody in that program that we could reach out to. That planning meeting is where you say, hey, we really need to reach this group. And Nick and I will say, yep. What do we need to do? It's like tentacles, or no, better than tentacles. We drop the stone in the water and you get these ripples that can go out. You need to help us with that. And but I know there's always a point person, official or unofficial, in those groups. And you let us know and we'll make sure they're included. I'm guessing you did that when you did this planning, that you made sure. And there's marginalized groups, I might add, that go well beyond race and culture.
Thank you.
Did you want to add anything?
No, that's okay.
Okay, Member Lofold?
Thank you.
This is not as specific. It's like, why do you want to work with us? Why? You know,
Good question.
Yeah, why do you want to be here with us? You
Well-
probably know our successes and our challenges. And so, why are you here?
Well, and we can both speak to this.
Yeah,
but
we both.
Yeah, please do.
I've had the good fortune of working in 2 different states, 16 years as a superintendent, and working very intentionally on marginalized communities, to your question. Over the last year and a half, I've been doing consulting work for equal opportunity schools, which has taken me to your fine state of Minnesota, and states throughout the central part of the United States, from Minnesota to North Carolina. What that has highlighted to me, and this will get to your question directly, I always had equity of opportunity as a goal as a superintendent and as a building principal for all kids. What I've learned in the last year and a half, it's equity of opportunity and access for all kids to programs, to opportunities. And the time I've spent with my time in Minnesota has highlighted that this is an opportunity to not only work with you, the board, and the community of Duluth, but to bring that to what you have. Your mission statement speaks to me. As I said earlier, I have a passion now for working with districts that want to make a difference for all kids. I sense that you do. I sense that from you engaging 2,000 community members in that Kathleen referenced. And I'm at the point where I honestly, I pick and choose who I want to work with, because I want to spend time working with those organizations that really want to help kids and find these kids that are missing. We know 750,000, based upon the research we're doing with Stanford now with the U.S., 750,000 low-income students of color are missing from high school classes. They're capable, they're missing, and they're generally low-income and students of color. So I have a passion for that, and I want to work with organizations that want to make that difference, and I sense that in Duluth.
As for me, I have spent my entire life as an adult in a career wanting to make things better for kids. I honestly, every job I have ever had is about promoting student learning, achievement, and success. And to me, they are 3 entirely different things. And to be able to help other districts is my passion. Every district that I was superintendent was an extraordinarily challenging district. I will go so far as to say in some instances highly dysfunctional and not doing a very positive service to its students. And I think as a nation we can do so much better. And my part in it, I'm pretty knowledgeable in a lot of things. All you have to do is look and see how old I am. I've had a lot of experiences and a tremendous amount of successes. And I know after reading through your materials, I absolutely know that what can assist you in the limited regard that I have done some reading, and it gives me extraordinary pleasure and satisfaction being able to find those people for school districts. And that's why we don't like to let go after the search, because the mentoring piece is equally as satisfying, even though we're off the paycheck, if you will. It gives me extraordinary satisfaction.
Thank you. I have one clarification on the slide here. Where you talk about your current clients, do you have other there isn't any clients from Minnesota, and can you give us some reference points to other districts in Minnesota you've served? So I just wanted to clarify that. And then I have another question.
Yeah, no, I haven't served any, and I don't know. And it's just a matter of us finding out about a position that's available. I have yet to hear about any searches in Minnesota. I can tell you one of my closest friends from college lives in the cities, and I can tell you that I have another set of friends that live outside of the cities. So I'm very familiar with Minnesota, and I can also tell you this, that in Wisconsin, you may not think, you may look at me like, you know, I have three heads, but we coveted the funding that Minnesota gave public education. And so we read about Minnesota all the time. And I will also tell you, some of my administrators took superintendencies in Minnesota, in other places. That also gives me satisfaction, is helping other people secure superintendencies. So two of them are at a charter in Minnesota, and one is in another district west.
My bigger question, that was just a clarification on the slide there, is in your other superintendent searches, what challenges have you faced working with a school board, and how have you worked through those challenges with that school board that you were working with?
A search I did but a couple years ago, we couldn't get all the board members in the room. And that was a huge challenge, because we were working with them very diligently to get their next leader, and they weren't, all the board members were not showing up for the interviews, which was turning candidates off to the point that some candidates said, take my name out. If all the board can't interview me when I'm a finalist in the slate, I don't want to be there. So we had to work really diligently, myself and teammate, to talk to the board and say, we just lost candidates because you guys can't get in the same room and spend time together. It's vital that this be a board. As you know, you're only as strong as the majority, and you're only as strong in this search for superintendent as all of you in the same room. So that was the biggest challenge I faced in the search. We finally did get them all in the same room, and we were successful to get a superintendent in there who was still in the position. I actually talked with him last week to see how he was doing. I've stayed in touch with him and the challenges and the successes that he's had. But getting everybody in the same room, you and all the board members, is vital in this process.
I would agree that that's one of the issues, is that you really need to all be hearing the same thing and meeting with the same candidates, and life happens, and I know that. But as soon as you have one person missing, it can cause a hiccup, a big hiccup. The other, I would say, in my last search, we had some extraordinary candidates, and there wasn't agreement on which one they were going to choose. And the way we worked through it was that, do you need to meet them again? Do you need to have another discussion with them? Because there's not a rule that says you can only have X number of interviews if you can all get together. But before we did that, I took them back to what their priorities. You know, you're going to have a long list of identifiers, but out of all of these, what are the critical components? Do they need to be well-versed in curriculum and instruction because you're looking for this? Or are you looking for somebody that is a strong people person who can engage? You have a chasm in the community, and you need to bring people back. You know, let's go through the main aspects of what it takes to do the job and what your priorities are. And once we had that discussion and we looked back at the rubrics again, those, you come back, and it's just a lot of talking through and discussion. And eventually, they decided, all in agreement, can you live with this person or can you not live with this person? And eventually they hired somebody who's highly, highly successful now and very happy. But sometimes it just takes a little bit longer than that calendar or timeline. Right. And when you have a decision that's this big, we regroup. Yeah. And maybe you don't decide until after spring break, Mm-hmm. I mean, those are, some of the things that you just, when you go to a vote, we want you to have that 7-0 vote, not a 7-1, because that person's already starting at a disadvantage. So we try to do that up front. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have been in a situation where people are saying, I'm just not happy. Well, let's go back and look for some more candidates.
Okay, great, thank you. So if everyone has one just maybe quick question, we could do that. Member Kirby?
Thanks, I didn't want to tip it over. Can you just briefly say what the mentoring part is? You said you mentored the superintendent after he was, or she, or whoever it is, was chosen.
Yeah, we touched base with how is it going. We look at those again, those priorities. How are things going here? And sometimes new superintendents are overwhelmed, and they may say, I don't even know how to handle this. And Nick and/or I'll say, well, here's some suggestions. On how you can work through this. And in some instances, a superintendent found that he was going to have to look at facilities, and I've never done this before. And I said, well, I've done 3 facility utilization plans, so let me send you some of my stuff. Yeah. Whatever area. Or a board president might call and say, I'm really struggling here. Well, how about trying these strategies?
The first thing I've done in my searches when I was the point mentor, I sit down with the new superintendent and I show them the profile that was developed, which is it's always significant to me as a superintendent. I say, put this somewhere you can look at it every day, because you're going to have a lot of noise coming in there. But this needs to be one of your drivers. The next thing I've suggested to all the superintendents I've been involved with placing, if there's not a strategic plan, and I'd encourage you, the board, have a community-engaged strategic plan, because that's going to be the guiding rudder of the district. Absent that, I say districts and superintendents fall into victims of ideas du jour and victims of their last conversation, and they lose that straightforward rudder that the district is moving toward the vision that you set as the board and the strategic plan that is engaged with the community. So I coach them on how to do that and give them resources to do that and give you resources to do that. That becomes how you do it. The third thing I offer is what I call board superintendent communication expectations. How are you going to do business with each other? What do you expect of the superintendent? What can they expect of you? It takes away all it builds a trust relationship where he knows what to expect from you and you know what to expect from him or her, whoever that may be, and you know how you're going to do business together. Those 3 things set the stage. And then I just did a Zoom conference last week with a candidate that I was involved in placing, because you don't have to be there. If you talk them through that, look at them. It's really customized. But those 3 things that I highlighted, I suggest in the front end of every new superintendent that I've worked with.
Yeah, I'll go quick, and I had a.
I'm sorry?
We can only have so many going on at once to really hear it well.
I should know better.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Member Trinka, go ahead.
Thank you. So we like to believe that we are a very unique district, and so can you tell us one example of a creative strategy that you use to solicit candidates that you heard from the community and the stakeholder interviews you were wanting to look for? So aside from advertising, aside from posting on websites, can you talk to us about one creative strategy that you use based on direct community input that you received throughout the process?
You can turn on now.
One of the questions we ask are at our community forums, and they have this little form to fill out, is, are there any people you would nominate from within the district or out of the district in the area? I don't know how creative this is, but we always ask the question. Is there somebody that you know that you would like to have as your superintendent? Tell us. And we will, I have always called the person and just say, I want to let you know that your name came up. We have this posting. I would encourage you to take a look at it and see if that's of interest to you.
I don't know if this is creative, but I'm a strong advocate of targeting searches in my contacts. I don't think it's creative, but it's very intentional. I think that's how we should do searches. That once I get a profile, I will target, I will send in a leadership profile in my network of people on LinkedIn or wherever I'm connected, which is over 31 years, you get a few people on your LinkedIn. I'm very intentional about targeting and very intentional about finding the best. And I have a list of current superintendents who are looking for a district that is larger and has an opportunity for them to grow as a leader. So I don't know if that's creative, but it's very intentional.
No, and I think we both would agree on that. We have come across so many people, and I stay in contact with superintendents all over. You know, you might meet them in Wisconsin, and they might be in South Carolina right now because they disperse. But we go after people. And the other thing I do is I'm very research driven, and I read a great deal. And if I read something that somebody's put out that's very consistent with what you're looking for, we'll inquire. Just, hey, you might be a great fit here.
Great, thank you. Member Loeffel, do you have a second question?
So we're going to be working pretty intensely with you too. You are the consultings that we're going to work with. So tell me your greatest strength in this process. What's your greatest interpersonal skill or strength that you're going to work with us on?
One of the things that I think I bring, and I brought to the positions I've been in, as a superintendent, I think that so many of my colleagues and former colleagues thought the position was of power. I never saw it that way. In the position of superintendent, you have access to a lot of different stakeholders and information. What you do with that information, I think, makes you either effective or ineffective. So what I would bring to this is a strong, active listener and able to synthesize, connect dots, and build bridges to different community entities into synthesizing what you're looking for and to connect those players. It's okay we can hear all kinds of things. But I think over the years I've been able to process that and come back to you, and I'll come back to you and be very candid to say, we sat with all these stakeholder groups and students and parents and teachers, and I can develop themes pretty quickly and develop what the focal points are going to be to share with you. So you would get, I listen. And I think in this day and age that's becoming a lost art. But I'll listen and bring that information back to you in a format that is systematic and talks about not only, one school, but Duluth Public Schools as a system.
No.
I'm not.
Member Eder, did you have a second question?
Yeah, mine are just real quick. Do you do off-list references, off-list checks? Do you go off the list of a couple times removed?
Yeah. I don't.
Always.
I like the term. I don't put much stock in the ones that are listed. I'll talk to them, but I go way off.
Good. Okay. And then the second thing is, do we have access to all the applications or not?
To every single one?
Your mic.
Yeah, sometimes I like to noodle around things like that.
Not that I'm aware of.
So
No,
you would
because-
you would screen the applications before we would see them?
Yeah, the how is we're going to interview God knows how many leaders.
I like your thought that way. I mean, there's going to be a lot.
There will
No,
be.
there will be. I don't
I guarantee it. I mean,
underestimate
I already know in
what
the
a
Minnesota-
very good school district and how appealing this is going to be to a lot of people.
I've talked to my colleagues from MSSA in Minnesota the last 2 weeks. We're going to have a rich candidate pool. Our job is to interview them preliminarily and bring you the slate for you to really dig into them.
And the slate would be 6-ish?
And it depends. Like Kathleen said, the last one she did had 7.
Okay.
That's the ballpark.
So we won't look at any others other than those?
We have to be very cautious about confidentiality issues with people who apply.
Okay.
Because they may just be exploring a possibility and they cannot destroy the credibility with their existing boards.
Right.
So we're certainly, if you hired us, we're working for you, but we can't be unethical and not be mindful of the confidentiality that the candidates who are applying are holding us to.
So let's just hypothetically say that we look at the 6 and we're like, okay, 3, fine. But can you go back and bring us another 3?
Bring you more.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, as long as that's as long as there's that, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kathleen
Okay.
alluded to that earlier. I mean, our job is to get you the best fit. And we may bring you a slate of 4 and you're like, that's great. Or you may say, you know what, can you keep looking? We want to do it till you get the fit. But I wouldn't, you said you're nervous. I wouldn't be nervous about that. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing for you.
True, that's true.
You know?
When I, in every district I've been, and we're looking for a principal, for example, I would always have a stakeholder group from the school be part of the interviews, and I would always have whoever was facilitating the meeting tell the group, do not settle. Don't feel, oh, we've got to pick one. If there just isn't somebody that's blowing your socks off, do not settle.
Right.
We'll go back and we'll come back and bring back some more. Do not settle.
I couldn't agree more. I've revisited that with principal searches I've done, superintendent searches I've done. We will not. I totally agree with that, Kathleen. We will not settle.
Thank you.
Not that I've disagreed with you any today.
Okay, I think I get the last question, the second question of mine, but how do you work to prepare candidates for coming here to be interviewed? And you touched a little bit on that, but then also how will you continue to work to prepare the board for the different steps of the process? We talked a lot about kind of that first meeting, but all the other steps along the way to prepare the board's role.
I'm trying to think what slide that is.
Yeah.
Here we go.
So we will help you with, I keep turning it on and off. We're going to help you create some tools, some questions, those instruments for the interviews, the finalists, any way we can prepare you as to how you ask the questions, like we were saying earlier, what not to ask. We even go through a mini training if you have stakeholder groups. We meet with them prior, saying you may not ask these questions. How do you feel comfortable? Do you want one person? Do you want to share? We pretty much take you through it step by step, and we're going to be meeting with you more than once. So we'll cover it in those other meetings, and if you need more information, we can do phone calls or whatever to help you be comfortable.
And the stakeholder groups and the information you get back from the stakeholder meetings, that's advisory information back to you. Having a say is different than having a vote. You guys you're elected officials. We're a representative republic, and you are going to be voting for the next superintendent. But we strongly embrace stakeholder engagement in an advisory capacity. High value to get that information back. And to your question on the candidates, Obviously, we would coach them on, I'm going to be very honest, they should, if they're getting to us, they better know a lot about Duluth to get any further with me or Kathleen. Because we want people that really can research and understand. And I want to show them information, and I say, what do you know about Duluth? They need to come as a superintendent candidate to us very prepared. We know a lot about your district. They better know a lot about your district or they won't go very far with us. There's enough out there for them to look at this information. And I'll say, what would you do in your first 90 days in the interview process? What are some challenges you see? What are some successes that you can amplify? What are some things that you can amplify in the work that Duluth is doing? They need to know that, and that kind of gives you a glimmer into what we're doing to get you the slate. So I won't be nervous because they need to know. We know. We're interviewing them for that. But in preparation, we just be very honest with the leader that you guys are looking for. Very candid.
He had mentioned, you have policy 8,000. It's your job to select the superintendent of schools. So everybody else is providing you feedback to help you do that, but it's your job. So whatever we can do to assist you, we'll do our very best. And you may come up with something that we've not confronted before, but you had asked what strengths we had, and you passed me by. So I'm going to tell you.
Thank you. See, that's the
No.
How did that happen?
I can tell you that both Nick and we have used, I can't think of a time as a superintendent I haven't used the interest-based problem-solving process where you find shared interests and options. We are both really, really good at that. I have walked into 3 situations in 3 superintendencies where I have been very successful at engaging a very fractured communities and brought them together. And I'm very creative. Sometimes you may roll your eyes at me, but I'm going to throw always ideas out to you.
On the interest base, I became such an advocate of interest-based problem solving. I went back to CEC, Consortium for Educational Change, as a superintendent and became trained and facilitate interest-based bargaining, because when you can get the triumvirate of leadership in a district, board leadership, teacher leadership, administrative and community leadership working together, that strength in that triangle is just can get all kinds of things done, because the shared interest in that group are the kids. What's best for kids? They're at the center of that, and that's why I bought into it, and that's why I became an advocate of it, and it became the process. The 3 district I was superintendent, I inherited decades of labor unrest that we brought interest-based problem solving and bargaining in and turned that around. It became a we thing, not a me thing. We did things with people, not to them. And that was the key to the success, the interest-based problem solving. The shared interest is what's good for kids. That's always the primary interest.
Okay, great. So, thank you. Yeah. Okay, I think we're wrapped up now. So, thank you both again for an engaging presentation. Yeah.
Regardless of what happens, we certainly wish you the utmost in success.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck with everything, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take 5 minutes, and then we'll come back for any further quick discussion that we want to have yet tonight as a board. That was on the agenda. Okay. No, we're not choosing. We just, any kind of wrap-up stuff we may want to talk about. Yeah. What are you looking for?
The presentations.
Just wanted to shake your hand and say thank you again.
I was going to come catch you. No, it's okay. Yeah, here you go. This is the one from the school board. Actually, get it from Mr. Swarsky. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. You can get it. He had grabbed one for the media, so.
Oh, okay.
Did you get the one from MSBA?
No, I did not.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Board, if we can come back together. Board, if we can come back together. Yeah, that will be fine. I think you got them at Bender's, didn't you, Jill? So I'm just trying to get us back. Let's confirm where she got her boots. No. Okay. Great questions, everybody. Good couple of presentations. Yes, it is. So the next section that was on our agenda for today was just board discussion on the search firms. And just to clarify, we are not voting. We are not for the public, but we did have board discussion on the search firms. And I was thinking that one way to start this discussion is, now that we've had these two presentations, is there any additional questions or additional information we might want from either party, or either that Mr. Swirsky could gather for us now that we've had these two presentations. So is there anything additional information that, and you can think about it, I just want to, that kind of came to my mind as part of this next piece of the discussion. And then the other piece is if there is any additional questions on kind of the finance piece or the contract piece, because that's, you know, that's different than this piece. I mean, they both included things, but just any clarification around that. So those are just kind of two thoughts to start our discussion, but yeah.
So I really liked...
I'm sorry, I had my light on first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just have a quick clarifier because then I got to go. I've got less than an hour to get him to bed. Should we just email questions to Mr. Swirsky and then he can combine them all and send them if we have them specific to the other firms? Is that the process? If we have follow-up questions, I'd like some time to digest.
Yeah, but in terms of him getting additional information before our Tuesday school board meeting, that would mean getting him probably questions to, you know, just to give him time.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
So probably tonight or tomorrow, before noon tomorrow is a fair.
Yeah, and you know, he's going to be, I'm not going to commit him to anything until he walks in the door, but, because I don't even know his schedule, but that could make sense, Sally, so thank you for approaching it that way. I just would want him to respond to that.
Yep. Okay, great.
But
Thank you.
I did want us all to know that, you know, we just had two very good detailed presentations, and we got some great handouts, which I'm sure we all go home and read the minute we get home tonight, that there is a window of opportunity anyways for any additional information that we could get if we needed to make our decision.
I'll show you my shoes.
Bye, Noah. You did a great job. Thank you. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I guess, you know, I am hoping, and I don't, you know, if I'm going to voice it, maybe I don't have to email Mr. Swirsky, but I was looking to see, I know he gave us a sheet of cost estimates. And
I did ask him to bring that again, so I think he was going to hand that out at this part of the discussion.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yeah.
Just for those two firms now, yeah. We've had them for all of them, and now...
Yeah, and I just asked him to bring that back, knowing, just to make sure everyone was looking at the same thing, and again, we can ask more questions on that on Tuesday, but this would be an opportunity for us to particularly think through the financial piece. So, but he should be back in a minute. So,
can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
As long as nobody. So, I'm just curious as to what Tuesday. Oh, thank you. What Tuesday meeting looks like when we get to this part of the agenda. Do we envision, you know, a conversation amongst board members then, kind of, you know, or do we come with just a few questions and then a vote happens? Like, are we gonna, or don't? I guess we don't know. I don't know how you approach Tuesday.
Well, we do want a vote to happen if we're ready to do that vote, so that we can move forward with hiring someone. So, you know, that is our goal and what we've put out there to the community. With two board members not here tonight for this piece of the discussion, you know, I'm not sure what other questions they will have. I'm not sure, you know, where they're at. So, I think our hope would be that we would have some discussion and then move towards a resolution in support of and a vote. So, yeah.
I'll just react to that because I haven't been. We really haven't had a lot of big votes where, you know, the conversation is going to be specific at Tuesday night. So, maybe a way I think I'm going to approach. I have watched other years when you've been on the board when I haven't, where you kind of say this is what I'm voting, and here are the reasons why, and here might be the reasons where the other firm isn't as strong for me. Is that kind of how you approach your, turning your mic on and maybe just sharing how you're going to, how you're going to vote, and then why you're voting that way, and then that becomes your contribution to the night.
And again, I'm hoping to get some guidance here for all of us from Mr. Swirsky, who has done this with a couple times already with boards, in terms of the final vote. Now we narrowed it down to 2, so that was a big step for us, right? And then now we've had the presentation, so So I'm hoping he's coming. No, he is coming back. Any other? So process is your question really, is the process for Tuesday. Finances, just to make sure we're clear on what the proposals actually are saying in terms of cost. Any other kind of broad questions like that?
No, I think that a firmer estimate of cost would be good, just given all this. I'm not sure that all you really need to say is who you're voting for. You can go into lengthy discussions, which I'm not sure how necessary it is. I think it is somewhat, but, it doesn't have to be detailed. You don't have to. But I think what I'm going to try and do is, narrow my choice down. I'll think about this and say this is it and this is why, and go from there.
I think a discussion about why you're in support, not why you're not in support. Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. Yeah.
Right, and that was similar to the discussions we had going into hiring of a school board candidate. When we got to the discussion piece, we wanted to highlight why we were supporting folks, because we have 2. I think we did a good job bringing 2 very good options for our superintendent search here to do these presentations, and so.
I need to. Oh, good. Here's Tim, because I got kids.
Okay, Mr. Swirsky, we just have a couple questions. Could you go where you can be by a mic, please? So we went ahead with just said, are there, if folks had any additional questions and following these 2 presentations, and also once we get a chance to read through again their documents, supporting documents. If we got questions to you by, say, noon tomorrow, so that would give you the time to reach out. Does that seem reasonable?
That would be fine. Is it, if I could have them probably emailed to me, that would be best, because it'll be easier to relay them.
And then we would want you to share the answers back to all of us. Yeah, okay.
Will do.
Okay, second. And then the second comments that came out of our questions was just a firmer estimate of the cost, now that we had these 2 comparisons, and we did ask some questions about that, but I think we still would like kind of a firmer sense of the cost differences based on what they gave us today and their initial proposal.
And are you asking my opinion now? Or okay. I think the expenses for travel are probably going to be their service overall is pretty comparable. You're probably going to incur a little bit more from this group because of the distance they're going to have to travel, depending on the number of times, versus somebody coming up from the cities and mileage, and some of that expense is built in. They did have $6,000, I think, for that travel, and then there was an asterisk there. It was kind of like with MSBA. They specifically said we would do this and this and this in the community, and I think this group is still wanting to meet with you before they know
X, Y, and Z in the community and how much time it would take. I do think we could do some long distance, like she was mentioning, long distance learning. But if it's just a question of sitting down and meeting and being able to ask questions of them without them having to travel all this way for, a half hour, hour and a half meeting. So, and that could save some expenses too. We would have that technology.
And it would need to be an open meeting again.
Yes.
Like we've done sometimes when board members have been gone, we've done that televised, bringing people in. So, we have done that. But to be clear, it would be an open meeting wherever, yeah. In terms of the finances then, I do have a couple more questions I had alluded to about the advertising piece, and because I think NSBA, it was included, any advertising they did, but I can follow up with that question.
Okay.
Unless you...
No, I think they're going to have recommendations of where the best places to advertise, where you're going to get the most value for your dollar on both of them. I think, even though MSBA is going to say it's included, they've got connections that that's probably they're going to, and then if we have a budget that we're going to sit, for advertising, I think BWP would also say then we'd recommend you spend your dollars here. So.
Okay.
Would it all be, I can't think of the word because that we would ask for not a recommendation, but a guidance for CFO Erickson, like are both of these firms within our budget? She I don't know, I don't think I want you to answer that right now, but she has alluded to the fact that she's put this in the budget for this year, but now that we're down to these two firms, is she concerned about
at this point? Yeah, at this point, no. I've shared, some of the tentative costs, and I do have that sheet if you'd like to see it again. Yeah.
I think 25,000 was what we had budgeted. Thank you, Member Eater. Yep. Yep. Okay, could we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
The meeting is closed. Thank you.